Hey, sir.
What's happening?
Welcome, everybody. Getting situated. This. Ken, I don't know if I checked with you, but you're in the discussion group, right? The Facebook discussion group?
Is that the martial arts wealth mastery members only?
Yes, sir.
I am. Yes, thank you. I've been scouring the files for the last week or so.
Okay. All right, good.
Now, is that Facebook and our member site? Which one is it?
The Facebook group, sir. Yeah.
Say it again?
The Facebook group?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it will be this one. Picture of Colorado. We have our live meeting, you guys. We're kicking that off tomorrow. Stop share. All right. Since we got Master Smith on, anybody have any questions? Just kick us off before Master Oliver hops on. No. I know Mr. Thornton, he couldn't make it, and a couple of people had a challenge with today. Oh, here's Anthony. Let's let Anthony in there. How's Master Oliver, Master Smith?
Let me check. I'm upstairs. Let me check, see what.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
Hey, Anthony, welcome.
Hello.
I hope everything's going well.
Well, it's sunny. Let's call it.
Okay.
Take it as it comes.
Yes, sir. Well, hopefully we can, help you get your numbers up here.
That'd be appreciated.
Here's Master Oliver now.
There we go. Technical
There he is.
problem solved in theory. Anyway, sorry about that. I got tied up in a call with Dan Kennedy. And then my tech wouldn't cooperate. But anyway, we're getting ready for our live meetings here. Sorry if you're not going to be there, but we're going to be on for anybody who is tomorrow, starting at 10 a.m. here at my house, and then. Friday will be at the Comfort Inn. It's right over there. And then, so we have Quick Start Thursday, Friday, Leadership Mastery on Friday, Saturday, and then our $1 Million Plus schools are staying over on Sunday. Bob, what do we have? 12 or 14 people on Sunday in that $1 Million School group?
Right around there, sir. Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah. And our shift here today was to focus more on what you can and should be doing during summer, and I wanted to make sure that we did that. But let's as usual start with any questions, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, I had opened it up. Everybody was quiet unless somebody's thought of something since then.
It's always funny to me to see martial arts instructors shy, but that does happen. Okay. Nothing to begin with. Okay. By a yay or nay, who in here thinks that summer is usually a slow time of year for karate schools or judo schools or MMA schools or whatever it might be?
Yeah.
Or
Who was that?
Everybody.
Everybody? Okay.
I don't think Don was the only one that didn't raise his hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody, why do you think that it's slow?
people are going on vacation. I find like the heat usually like drains people, makes them want to do maybe less inside. Yeah, I don't know. People just seem to be
Heat is
lazier.
more inside, Tyler.
I know for me, a lot of the students go to very expensive day camps. So a lot of the parents look to cut other expenses. I also get the excuse of they're in camp all day, they're tired. This is from current students over the summer. So we want to, they're tired when they get home. We want to take a break for the summer. And, the vacations and that kind of stuff.
Okay. And let me ask the question differently. Who thinks it's difficult to generate new enrollments in the summer?
Same
Okay.
hands.
Same hands? Everybody thinks it's difficult to generate enrollments in the summer. Okay. Let me give you two takes on that goes back at least 30 years. And then another take that is perhaps a more recent evolution is my take. Master Smith, I got this philosophy from you, which is how December ended up being our number one cash month of the year, and then November number 2 cash month of the year. Your philosophy as espoused to me in Washington, D.C. in 79 or something like that was, I just try to look at whatever everybody thinks is the slowest month of the year and make it the best month of the year. And you can either accept that as the ravings of a moron, or you can go, oh, well, that's an interesting take. So in November, December, we turned that into renewal blitz time, and ended up doing more cash and more renewals than probably any other in 1 month than any previous quarter, and in a 6-week period than probably any previous 6 months. But then the summer, if you look at it the same way, is years ago, what I started looking at was what our marketing cycles are. And Matt Smith, you'll appreciate this. I used to have arguments with Nick Okinas about this, and he'd say, well, pretty much every month is about the same. And I'd say, no, December is different and July is different. And, there's different seasonalities, and there's a reason why January is a good time and why September is a good time, because just the way people think about their year as they go, right? But what are parents thinking about in May and June? Well, how am I going to keep the kids occupied for the summer? So if the parents are thinking about what am I going to do to keep the kids occupied in the summer, shouldn't that make May and June a really good time to do enrollments? And so I started doing summer enrollment specials, and over the years the price changed and the structure changed in one thing or another. But I started doing a summer special every year, and my basic rule of thumb is we started promoting it about 4 weeks before school was out, and kept promoting it heavy 2 to 4 weeks after school was out. And so that gave it a 6 to 8 week window. And so therefore May ended up being, and June, our 2 biggest enrollment months of the year, rather than what people thought of was a slow time. Give me half a second.
Yeah, a perfect example of that was one of our members who had been with this for several years, had gotten his gross up to in the 90s. He got about 90,000, and then he thought he had it figured out, so he was going to, run it on his own, and he did for about 1.5 years till his gross dropped to about 60,000. Then he jumped back aboard with us, and it was about this time last year, and he came to our live event out here in Colorado, and then went back, and it was about this same time, Master Oliver. He went back in the next 6 or 7 weeks during the summer. He enrolled 116 people.
Yeah, if you're talking about
just
Scott,
doing the marketing Parthenon that we had discussed at the live event.
yeah, if you're talking about Scott and Brandy,
Yeah,
they came to last May's event, got remotivated, and it was July through early August that they did the 116 enrollments, and it was kicked off with a July 4th live event. But let me go back to kind of the historic thought about that was, I concluded, well, if it's true that there's seasonality to when people get like are ready to start, what would those seasons be? Well, certainly January. I think everybody agrees, fitness industry, adults and parents are eager to do something in January. Probably no one would disagree with me that back to school is like a huge time, especially for the kids market, but for the adult market as well. And you know, it's pretty easy to see now, at least I've described it, that May and June should be huge enrollment periods of time because people are looking for something to do in the summer. And so my next iteration of that was, well, if that is the case, what do we want to do? We want to go to everybody who raised their hand for any reason and didn't enroll, and go to everybody who enrolled but then stopped attending for whatever reason. And why don't we make a real strong run at them? Well, when do we want to make a strong run at them? Well, at the very least in January and May, June, and in August, September, because we have back to school, we have something for the summer, we have New Year's special. You know, we can add a couple other periods of time. I always tend to add March, April in there as well. But then the next evolution was, well, if that is the case, what are our lead generation opportunities in the summer, even if we think it's going to be difficult to get them enrolled in July? We can at least get people to raise their hand and go track them down in the summer so that we have a big list in back to school to follow up on. And so, you know, over the years, I kind of shifted thinking a little bit and said, well, okay, so our mission in July, August, or June, July, August is to generate 1,000 leads, right? And what our typical conversation is for schools is, you know, 100 leads from, you know, any mix of sources is going to generate at least 20 enrollments. You know, the flakier the source, the lower the conversion rate, and the more solid the source, the tighter the conversion rate. But generally, we have a bunch of $1 million a year schools who are generating 100 leads more or less a month. And if that sinks from 100 down to 40 or 30 or 20, then their numbers start to decline. But if it's regularly 100, it's fine. But you know, I shifted that for our staff, and again, this is many years ago still, to, well, over the summer, we know where to find the kids, at least. We know that they're going to be at the local swimming pools. They're going to be at the local Boy Scout troop. You know, they're doing little camp outs and things over the summer. We know the Girl Scout camp and the Boy Scout camp have, you know, they have facilities here that we can go do things. We know that we can find them at daycares. We know we can find them at summer camps. We know. So, you know, when you go through the list, if we had the excuse, which I didn't then, because we were doing stuff with public schools all the way back to 1983. But if you did have the excuse that it's tough to get into public schools, it's super easy to get into your local pool. It's super easy to get into the local Boy Scout troop or pack. It's super easy to get into the the summer camps and the daycares and so forth. So I started shifting it to, let's gear ourselves up and let's generate 1,000 leads over the summer. If we generate 1,000 leads over the summer, probably we'll have pretty normal enrollment months in July and August. But even if we don't, we're going to have the killer back to school to end all back to schools. Because, and again, let me describe what the current process would be is, you know, right now in May, go back through your database. And I don't care whether it's an Excel spreadsheet or if it's a stack of forms sitting on your floor somewhere. Go back through your database for everybody who has opted into your website, who has come to a birthday party and didn't enroll, everybody who's come in for an intro who didn't enroll, and everybody who has enrolled who faded out for whatever reason. And that's your database. So everybody who was a prospect, everybody who was who raised their hand in any way, shape, or form, and anybody who enrolled but fell apart. You know, whether they fell apart, they enrolled and never came back for their third lesson, or they got to their green belt and then dropped. And then go after them super heavy. And by go after, I mean use all of the current day and old tools that we have available to target them specifically. So if you go through the list, you know, if it was 30 years ago, I'm gonna put a bunch of people on the telephones and we're gonna do a telephone blitz. And then we were going to put envelopes in the mail with stamps and do a direct mail blitz to those people, right? Now, what are my options now? Well, I can do a telephone blitz, but I can also text message them all. I can also leave ringless voicemail. I can also take that list, target them on Facebook, target them on Instagram, target them on Google. So I can do retargeting ads aimed at them. So create a custom audience of blank, right? So I can do all of those things. So as I look through, and by the way, I can email them. So I can text them, I can email them, I can do ringless voicemail, I can do live outbound calls, I can do direct mail, I can do email, I can do retargeting, and I've probably missed a few, but which one of those do we want to use to follow up with those prospects? All of the above, right? So if it were me, I would be looking to get a piece of mail in their mailbox every week for 4 weeks. And I would be looking to get an email in their inbox every day. And I would be looking to at least follow up every piece of mail with a text and a voicemail. And I would be looking to get the list and put somebody on the phones, starting at the top, working to the bottom. And Master Smith, to use Master Moody's terminology, CT, what is it, CTE, call, text, email. I would put somebody on the phone who calls, starting at the top of the list. When they don't get them, they leave a voicemail, and then they send a text, and then they send an email, and then just work your way through the list and then start over. And if you want to accelerate the process, do a broadcast voicemail to everybody, and a broadcast text to everybody, and a broadcast email to everybody at the same time. The same day you're gonna put somebody on the phone, and you just hit the entire list and blitz through it. And when you put somebody on the phone, I think mostly what we do is we put people who are wimps, who are not good at this stuff. So what do? They have a list of however many people, 100 people. And at 11 a.m. in the morning, or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or 7 o'clock in the evening, they make one pass through the list. They get 5 or 10% of them answer the phone, and then they write it off. Well, what I mean is we start at the top of the list, and we blitz through the list A to Z, and then blitz through the list on different day parts. So we blitz through the list A to Z in the morning on a weekday, in an afternoon on the weekday, in the evening on a weekday, and we vary up the times one thing or another until we get, until we've hit everybody on the list at least 7 or 8 times before we give up on not getting hold of people. What you will find when you're doing outbound phone calls is oftentimes I can do an outbound call and people don't answer the phone, but then they call you back. Or I can do an outbound call, text them, they don't answer the phone, but they respond to the text. So what we've got to do is kind of hit on all cylinders on that follow-up, if that makes sense. But so going back to that evolution, that was many years ago, as I concluded, well, summer is a hell of a good time to generate leads, because in the adult market, we know where to find them. In the kids market, we know how to find them. So, instead of doing, an elementary school, we're doing summer camps and Boy Scouts. I went through the list already. Don't forget church, church Bible schools and Bible studies and all of that kind of stuff as well. But there's any number of places. In fact, there's probably twice as many that you would find if you did a deep dive than if you look at it at a cursory.
And if I can add
Yeah.
some other things, Master Oliver, that I guarantee will give them 5 times the results of what you just said.
Mhm.
And that's the simple marketing idea that pre-pandemic, that our schools were killing it. They were getting 200 or 300 leads a month just from live events. And then the pandemic killed that for about 1.5 years. And then they started going back to the live events. And that's why everybody's gross is now. That's why last year we had so many $1 million schools, is because they went back to doing that old grassroots marketing of doing the live events, combined with all the internet marketing that we had to do during the pandemic. And they were having record enrollment years and record grosses. These live events, it's the biggest time of the year during the summer. All these kids are out of school. There's things that they're going to be doing. There's all kinds of outdoor activities during the summer that people gather. So any of these community events or fairs or markets or live events where people gather, it doesn't matter what the event is. As long as there's a lot of people gathering there, you can go set up your prize wheel, that spin wheel, and get 50 to 100 leads on one weekend, on one day. Some schools, it takes a whole month to get 100 leads. But when we're doing live events, people are getting 50 to 100 leads in one day. So don't pass up these opportunities during the summer, because during the school year, most of these live events are just on the weekends. During the summer, they're every day. They have them everywhere. You got to do your research with your community. Go in, Google activities in your community, go to the Chamber of Commerce, find out what activities are going on, and go to community rec centers and see what's on their calendars. You just got to do a little research. And if you do, and you go to these live events, you're going to see exactly what we're talking. And it's the easiest marketing that we do. And it doesn't take a lot of training. You have to learn one line. Do you want to spin the wheel and win a prize? And they say, yes, come on over. And then you spin the wheel, have them fill out the slip, and you book their appointment. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. It is so easy that even our newest members can go out, and the first one they ever do, I remember Ken Gibson in New York, he did one, and he had this little bare table with not even a tablecloth, and he had a spin wheel, but nothing else on it, and one banner in the back. It looked really cheesy. It wasn't very elaborate. And he ended up with 250 leads that weekend. So guys, don't miss an opportunity. It's in our member site, how to do those live events. There's samples of what the tabling looks like, how you decorate and that kind of stuff. But you got to do the research to find out where to do them.
Yeah, well, but again, kind of continuing on the same train of thought is, if you just started with, what for me is a 30-year-old idea, which is, let's go get as many leads as possible over the summer, and let's do a big summer blitz, and let's do a big back to school blitz. Then, you're in really good shape already, because you're generating a lot of lead flow. And Matt Smith, I want to add something to what you just said. This is not just a kids market thing. A lot of times people hear us talking and say, well, we know where the kids are. Well, we know where the adults are too. It's if you're looking to build a predominantly adult program, fitness, one thing or another, that all of these same ideas work just as well for that. Now you look in different places. I'm not going to go to the local Boy Scout troop looking for adults. I'm going to, in most cases, go to their employer or go to other big summer live events that have a more of adult-centric focus. But it works just as well for the adult groups as well. But that having been said, let's go on to the next phase. The next phase is, and this honestly was kind of a discovery when we were doing the movie theater promotions, is many years ago, Junri Institute, Junri and Bruce Lee were good friends. They geared up, and of course, Bruce Lee was dead by the time the movie was released, but they geared up and did massive promotions in Washington, D.C. with the release of Enter the Dragon. So this is, I think, 1972. That's how long ago that was. And having been part of the organization, I had heard about that, because they'd talk about Bruce Lee and Junri and the different things and one thing or another. And so when Karate Kid 1 came out, I may have been the only one in the country who figured out pretty quickly that was a big opportunity. And I had booths. First weekend it was open, I saw an early screening and went, well, this is going to be great for us. And I had banners and posters and flyers in the theaters. I had booth setups, all that kind of stuff. But then later on, what I discovered was, didn't have to be Karate Kid, Ninja Turtles, didn't have to be a martial arts movie, or for adults, John Wick. as long as it was a big multiplex and it was a blockbuster that attracted the right audience, we could have the same results. And the way I learned that, forgive me if I've repeated the story, is Karate Kid 4 came out. About 3 people went to see Karate Kid 4. If you don't know, remember that was Hilary Swank's, debut as the Karate Kid. And we had our best weekend ever with movie promotions for Karate Kid 4. Well, it turned out it was the debut of the first of the reboots of the Batman series, with God, what's his name? The first Batman in the
Michael.
Michael Keaton. That's right. That's right. And keep in mind, this is pre-YouTube, so people were buying tickets to other movies just to go see the preview of the Batman movie. That's how highly anticipated this was. And so we had booths set up, all branded with Karate Kid, all this stuff. I was puzzled because I show up at the theaters, walk into the theater, there'd be like the only person in the theater would be one of the employees, eating popcorn, taking his break, because it was empty space. But we did better at that on that movie promotion than we ever did. And it was the aha moment for me of, oh, doesn't have to be a martial arts movie. It just has to be a lot of people showing up that are the right people. And so then, and this is again many years ago, we started doing our best enrollments of the year over the summer, in part because the blockbuster movie season back then was all the, they're called the summer blockbusters for a reason. They were coming out in June, July, and August, mostly July and August. So, and that's the example that Matt Smith was using a minute ago, was a big AMC theater weekend. And it was one of the Avengers movies at the time. And so the movie theater promotion this summer worked great. It's just another live event promotion. Coming up this summer, and I'll say it's fair enough to say that since the pandemic, the movie thing has been hit or miss. You had the pandemic that shut down the box office for a while, and then frankly, Disney shit the bed pretty hard, and the Avengers movies, tanked off, and they didn't do as well with Star Wars, with Pixar, or with Marvel. But last year, if I had been in the theaters for Guardians of the Galaxy, or if I had been in the theaters for Mario Brothers, or perhaps I'm not sure we had anybody who did on this one, but if I had been there for Barbieheimer, the Barbie Oppenheimer movie, I would have kicked ass, right? And so far this year, you've had the Dune movie set new records. But coming up, there's the kids movie. It is a Pixar movie. What is it called? Inside Out or something like that. All the different emotions in the girl's mind, part 2. And we have another Marvel movie, but this one is what's the name of it? Deadpool. The Deadpool Marvel movie. It is an R-rated movie, but it's probably gonna be the biggest movie of the summer. So there are some big movie releases this summer, and what I find with all of this, and Matt Smith, let's go back to what you were saying a minute ago, is we're in the midst of what I've not too charitably for a long time called the bozo explosion of consultants around the industry. So as you guys well know, everybody and their brother are pretending to be an expert on how to do this stuff. Some of them have actually done it with their own school. To me, that doesn't mean much, because if they've done it in one location, it may well be their personality. It's not any systems that they can then replicate. So you've always got to be aware of that. Others they figured out how to buy Facebook advertising, or they figured out how to buy Google advertising, and they become an agency, and they're touting that they'll feed you a bunch of appointments and so forth. But of the friends of mine who are part of that, and some of them are very good in what they do, they all tell me, oh, that doesn't work for us. We can't get that to work. Well, it's the most simple scripting, the most simple process ever in the history. Matt Smith, you remember me laughing at Tim and Dave Kovar because they never could get the movie thing to work, and they never could get any of the other live event things to work. And they kept telling me that you can't do anything in the public schools in California. They just won't let you. Finally, I got them to do something in the public schools, but I never could get them to do a live event promotion right. But the live event promotion is very simple, as Matt Smith just said. It's first piece of script, one sentence, come over here, spin the wheel. You have them fill out the form. And then as soon as they spin the wheel, it's script number 2 is high five. Hey, wow, you want a martial arts uniform? That's worth $50. Congratulations. What I want to do is schedule a time for you to come in and get your uniform. We'll size you up, make sure you've got the right size, but you also get a free lesson. In fact, 2 free weeks of lessons. But let's schedule a time for a free lesson and to get your uniform. Is Monday at 7 or Tuesday at 6:15 better for you guys? And now you have the need 80% of the time or 75% of the time for the next piece of script, because what they say to you about 75% of the time is, I need to check with wife, husband, schedule, soccer schedule, some excuse of I need to go check with somebody else or scheduling. And the response to that is, oh, I understand. Let's find something tentatively to pencil in. It's going to be really busy, and I want to make sure that Billy gets his uniform and gets a time booked in the schedule. Tentatively, would the Monday or Tuesday work? And then they go, well, no, I know my wife works on Monday. I've got something on Tuesday. Do you have anything later in the week? Oh, yeah. Well, we have Wednesday at this time, Thursday at this time. Will one of those work? Oh, yeah, I'm pretty sure we can do Thursday. Let's put that in. Okay. And so I'm going to give you our phone number, email address, all that stuff. In fact, you'll get a notification if you need to reschedule, just reschedule it to a different time. Please let us know ahead of time, because we don't want to block anybody out of being able to attend if you're not able to attend that time. But that's it. So piece number 1 is come spin the wheel. Piece number 2, let's schedule a time for your first lesson and pick up your prize, whatever it might be. And then number 3 is, oh, let's pencil something in tentatively. Tentatively, what do you think will work? Well, with that system, what you get is 90% appointments from people who, spin the wheel or fill out the information sheet, and that's 100% of the ones who spin the wheel. You get 90% appointments. Some people are getting 100%. I've always used the benchmark at 75% or better. And if you send an untrained staff member out and just tell them the idea is make appointments, what they'll get is 25%. We see that over and over and over again. Well, I did that. We didn't do very well getting appointments. Well, how'd you do on getting leads? Well, you got a lot of leads. We didn't get appointments. Okay. Well, that means they don't know how to handle, well, I need to go check my schedule, or I'll get back to you when I check with the wife. By the way, do they ever go check anything, or do they ever get back to you? No. So, an untrained staff member is going to think they mean that. What they mean is, we have the best intentions right now. As soon as we watch the movie and go home and run some errands, we're going to have forgotten about even talking to you, right? But the numbers are about 90% make appointments. About half of them show up. So if I manage to get 100 leads at an event, I'm going to get 90 appointments. And if I got 90 appointments, I'm going to end up with, let's see, where was that? 90 appointments, 45 intros, 20 to 25 enrollments, maybe 30. But it's generally 50%, 50%, 90%, 50%, 50%. So, the next thing, so again, from a standpoint of marketing, and we'll come back and hit some specifics and so forth as we go with this. But from the standpoint of marketing, there are more opportunities for adults, for families, or for kids than any other time of the year. And we've gone through very quickly some of the checklists, but I can go back through some of them. Is around here, there's down in Golden, they have a big park, and every Friday night they have family night with movies when it gets dark. We also have that at Red Rocks Amphitheater. We have a lot of shopping centers who do similar things, where they either have friendly bands that come out and do live events, or they do a big blow up inflatable screen and they do a movie night in the parking lot. So that's one type of event. The other type of event is, of course, Memorial Day, Labor Day in Canada, Canada Day in the US, July 4th or Independence Day. Is those 3 holiday weekends, there's massive numbers of things that are going on, right? I mean, the problem with 4th of July weekend would be figuring out how to staff it up and buy enough booths and so forth to be everywhere you can possibly be, because there's too many opportunities, right? It's all over the place. But the same is true throughout the summer. Something we used to do a lot of that has become very, very, very seasonal is mall booths. We used to do a lot of kiosk and tabling in malls. The local shopping malls, a lot of the big ones will still do things where they have like a fitness deal or they have, a family deal or something. But what I found more recently, shopping malls have kind of fallen out of favor in most places. Is it's a good Thanksgiving to Christmas thing. It's a good Easter. I saw an orthodontist here that was set up right beside the Easter bunny. So, people come in, take a picture with the Easter bunny, and then they'd walk into the orthodontist booth and be given free toothbrushes and toothpastes and talk to them. Brilliant. I don't know if they did a good job of lead generation or not, but brilliant otherwise. But there's any number of different opportunities. Let's go ahead, Rand.
So, I've been looking. I notice a lot of events around my area that don't have any mention of vendors or booth or anything. What do you say to, you call and say, what do you say?
You want to
Let-
spin the wheel?
No,
I'm-
no. He's talking about lining up the booth.
I know, I'm kidding. I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah. Matt Smith, my son just turned 12 and you're now about 4 years separate in maturity of your humor.
Thank you.
I told him many years ago that as my son was growing older, eventually there was going to be an intersection of the maturity of their humor. And
Now, we passed that a long time ago.
we passed that a long time ago. That's right. That's right. The setting the stuff up. What I like to do, Rand, beforehand is I want to do a little bit of research on them and figure out what it is they think they're doing. Are they doing a community family activity? Are they a nonprofit doing a nonprofit fundraiser? Are they doing an event for nonprofits? There are some of those things. Or are they doing an event promoter and they're looking to have a big net profit from renting booth space, right? So usually you can figure out anything halfway big. If it's sponsored by the city, or by the county or by the parks, it's a much easier route to get into as a local merchant, without it being an expense. And if it's some big promoter who's doing something at the convention center and, behind the scenes, they're looking for a 6-figure net and a 7-figure gross, they're more in the business of selling booth space. And I've done any number of events on that end of the spectrum successfully. But I will tell you the risk is a little bit higher. There was a big event that fits into that category here in town for many years called All About Kids. Well, most years it was a home run for us. And of course I had locations spread out throughout the city and it drew citywide. So it was fine. But it was a very expensive booth space. If you want premium booth space, it was even more expensive, that type of thing. But I had a couple years where the only solid prospects were the other vendors. We went and talked to all the other vendors and set up, host parasite, co-promotional things with them. But they really just didn't, they didn't promote and get much turnout. So when you have a big investment in something like that, it really has to work, if you know what I mean. On the other end of the spectrum, if let's start with it's the movie night in the park or whatever. You go through the city website or the county or the community center or the shopping center and just figure out who's orchestrating it. And when I'm talking to them, I always start with the premise of what's in it for them, right? Never with the premise of why I want to do it. And so if it's a community or organized thing, I'm gonna talk to them and say, hey, I have a martial arts school. I've been in the area, for 42 years. We have, hundreds of families and thousands of people on our list, and we'd love to help in any way we can. It seems like a great family activity. And that's a good conversation starter, right? And then I'm going to ask them a few questions. What's the structure of it? What time, how does it work? I've got the details on the website or the poster or whatever, but how's that work? Do you have entertainment? How other than the movie or whatever, how's that working? And, sooner or later they get around to, giving you enough information. They say, well, one of the things we like to do, and let's say it's a charitable fundraiser, we work closely with Children's Hospital. We do fundraising for them. We'd love to set up a booth and, help with some fundraising for them. Or if it's not, a nonprofit type of thing, I might say, we'd love to be out there and introduce martial arts lessons with to the families in the area, and we'd love to promote it with our families as well. Give me all the information. We'll send it out to our email list. We'll promote it internally. And they say, well, what would you like to do? Well, typically we just do a booth. A lot of times we do a giveaway, give away free prizes and so forth. Is that something we could do? And, sometimes they ask you to do a demo or something. And I have no enthusiasm for demos, but if it gets me the free booth, I'm happy, right? So
And it gives you a chance to do something in front of everybody to tell them where your booth is and come on over. We have a prize wheel. Come by, spin the wheel, win a prize. And I always use that as a selling tool, Master Oliver, because these live events love vendors that give away stuff free rather than just selling stuff. So I like to talk about all the stuff we give away. We have a lot of prizes. We bring our prize wheel and everybody gets to spin it and win a prize. And that way, we're giving back to the community. And sometimes they'll say, okay, how much space do you need? And then, you tell them the sizes you want for your table and little area behind it. And they usually have them already marked off because they know what tabling is, setting up that part. And then just ask them how much is it for a table. If when you're talking, it's not a profit thing and it's a charity thing, I always like to throw in not one charity, but we do a lot of things. Bob, can you mute him?
Yeah.
That's Tomas.
Yeah,
I like to throw in more than one thing. I'll say we've done things for the hospital for the kids, but I also like to throw in Cancer
I'm
Society.
not sure. Bear with me 1 second.
Let me
Mr.
mute
Oliver,
him.
I'm not host. I don't have any control at the moment. I guess you grab host for me.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I was going to make an ill-fated effort to live stream this, but it didn't work.
So you have the Children's Hospital, but also throw in the American Cancer Society because that's big with everybody. We also have done for the American Diabetes Association, the JDF. These are all big charity organizations. So don't make it like you just did one thing. Let them know you're doing a lot of charities, because if they have a charity, then they know, okay, yeah, we're doing it for such and such. And now they know that you're not just doing it for the Children's Hospital or one of the others, but you're helping all the different charities.
Yeah, let's make sure everybody's got the full gist here, right? Rule number 1 is ask questions and shut the fuck up. So don't do verbal diarrhea. Before rule number 1 is research them as much as possible so you know what they're trying to accomplish. If you can't figure out from their promotional materials what they're trying to accomplish, ask questions and listen to the answers. Then once you've asked questions and listened to the answers, right? Again, my example number 1 of All About Kids, I would have just wasted time talking about any of that stuff to them. All they cared about was, we're selling booths at $1,500 a pop. If you want a premium space, it's $2,000. That's all they cared about, right? Now, beyond that, we can do some parent workshops. We can do some other things. I can work all of that kind of stuff in once I know what they're trying to accomplish and what's going on. On the other end of the spectrum, it's promoted by the city of, like here, Westminster, Colorado. Well, in that case, they're happy to help local businesses get exposure. They're happy to, bring quality things to the families of local kids. They probably don't want anybody selling anything at their event, but they're happy to have local businesses out there helping in one thing or another. So you've got to know what it is that they're looking for before you go on with it, right? If it's a local business promoting it, I always start, as Matt Smith was just saying, from the angle of a charity, but I always start from the angle of whatever their charity is. if there is one, right? So if McDonald's was hosting something, I always approached it with, we'd love to do help with fundraising for the Ronald McDonald House. Back in the day, and I don't know what it is now, but Burger King used to have the Burger King literacy, the King's literacy program or something like that. Chick-fil-A has their own thing. They do an orphanage and one thing or another. So if you have a business who's doing it as a nonprofit, I'd rather talk to them about their nonprofit and help out with that. When I've done, go ahead.
So how do we contribute if we're giving away, say, 2 free weeks? How do we help with the fundraising?
Well, what we do with the fundraiser is, when I say Children's Hospital, we have flyers that are $49. It's a month of lessons and a uniform for $49. And we then give the $49 to Children's Hospital, right?
Okay, so when it's a fundraiser, it's basically they gave lessons and for a donation.
Yeah.
Or Rand, you don't even have to do that. Then what you tell them is that, well, we'd like to make a donation then and set up our booth. And then you don't have to deal with all the little things to do that. You can do the other stuff all you want. I always just like to make a flat donation.
Well,
And-
but Matt Smith, it depends. So if I, and it was always a disaster, but we were always managed to get in anytime we wanted to. There was a big event called the People's Fair, and it was only nonprofits invited to participate, right? So they had all these different booths and so forth. And they did have, people doing food, and they were obviously making money, but everything else was purely nonprofit. So we could go in as a nonprofit. We couldn't go in as a for-profit. So I had to know that ahead of time. And in this case, Matt Smith, I couldn't give them $500 to rent the booth as a donation. They weren't looking for people to contribute to their charity. They were doing an organized event for nonprofits and charging the food people enough money to defray the cost in all likelihood. But again, that's where you've got to research them, figure out what's going on, ask questions until you know what it is they're trying to accomplish, and then provide them with what they're trying to accomplish. Right.
Master Oliver, William Wong is on, and he's done quite a few of these recently. I'd like to have him chime in if he could turn his camera on.
If he really is there.
He's there.
I am really here, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, and did you catch that, William? Rand was asking about, what do you say to these people, when you're trying to get in a live event? And, Master Oliver's
giving a live event, or what to say to the people that come up by the booth.
No.
How to set them up.
Oh, how to set them up? So what I do is I'll contact different people in the town or the city that either puts on events or understands what events are going on. So one of them that I mentioned before was the local Chamber of Commerce. So they're usually pretty tied up with everything that's going around the city, with the different businesses and different organizations. So that is one resource that's phenomenal. Another one is to just see, who's putting on events, and how do you find out? Well, you go to look up Google and just find out, what's going on in my area. Another one that's great is Facebook. I mean, if you go to Facebook events and you kind of see what's going on and you start liking some of these things that you're interested in, then what'll happen is that it'll give you other suggestions for other events. And you can also filter it so that it's only in your area. Like, I don't care about what's going on in Rockland or Roseville. I care about what's going on within 3 to 5 miles of my school. That's what I want to get involved in. I want to be involved with every school, every church, every nonprofit organization, every event thing going on. The city's putting on a movie night, a concert in the plaza, whatever it is. I want to know about it, and I want to find out, can I get a booth in that event? Right? That's what I care about. So it's you just got to really put the filler. And I know it takes time. It's not like a 15-minute thing. You really need to dig in and find out. And some things are good and some things are not so good. And you're going to have to find that out and take notes. So at the next year, you're like, oh, I want to do that event, or I want to stay away from that one. So another thing that I happen to be in the downtown area of my city. A lot of events get put on over here. So anytime there's an event going on, I'm finding out who's putting it on. And I want a booth right in front of my school. Yeah, it's fine if my school's open, but I want to make a big deal. I want to be in there and I want to flag it, and I want to have that wheel there to attract people. And I want to walk them even into the school and say, look, this is where it's going to happen. Your introductory lessons are going to happen over here. Go ahead, come on inside in the air conditioning and fill this out so we can schedule your first introductory lesson. It's fantastic. Does that help?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. And William, so the type of events that you've done and lots of schools done now, everything on the one end from farmers markets, which are like super easy to get into,
Yes.
to, big commercial events like I was talking about, all about kids, in the kind of the middle range of these nonprofit things where you have to figure out a reason why you're a nonprofit to be in there. And Matt Smith, you're right. Sometimes you can give them money. More often than not, I see as far as a live event, they don't want somebody in there commercially doing something. They're looking for, nonprofits in there. And on the other end of the spectrum is, see, a lot of these things, like if you go into a movie theater, they have a couple prohibitions in the contract, and some of them we can ignore. But one of the things they have the prohibition in the contract when you go in the movie theaters, they don't want you actively selling anything. Well, why is that? Well, they make all their money from concessions, and they don't want you walking over to them walking over to the booth and giving you $100 and then not going and buying popcorn, candy, a hot dog, and a $10 Pepsi. Because essentially 100% of their profits comes from concessions, not from movie tickets. If you didn't know, on the big releases, the theater's getting maybe 10%. They're doing like a 90-10 split. So Dune comes out, the ticket is $10, the movie theater is getting $1. All of their money is coming from concessions, and the distribution company's not getting anything from concessions.
Yeah.
And movie
That's
theaters.
why they like the booth, is because it's all giveaway. We're giving all free stuff, and they
Well,
like that.
Well, but
One other thing, Mr.
but Matt Smith, the point was, they don't want you exchanging money at the booth.
Exactly.
And a lot of these city events and so forth may be in that mode. So you've got to know ahead of time. If it's a farmer's market, obviously they're not in that mode. Everybody's selling something. And if it's a charity event, they're happy for you to be, doing a charity donation to, say, Children's Hospital or Cancer Society or whatever. But they don't want you, doing a for-profit. And if it's a movie theater, they don't want you selling something. They want you doing a giveaway. And it's, again, why you want to research and ask questions. Go ahead, Matt Smith. What were you going to say?
90% of the ones we did, we never sold anything.
Yeah.
It was all giveaway stuff. Occasionally there was something where people were selling things, and so then we would, do a summer special or a month of karate for, a discounted price, or a birthday party at a discounted price, or, you have a few things like that. But one of the biggest home runs during the summer also, and I guarantee if you do this, you will get a flood of students in. William, I want to make sure you hear this one too, is in the summer camps, you hear us talking about doing a summer camp. Well, there's a lot of moving parts in doing a summer camp yourself. And you cannot do it with your own staff, because
Matt Smith, let's not get into summer camp right now.
let me finish my talk,
Go
Master Oliver.
ahead. Go ahead.
So your summer camps, you cannot run it with your own staff. You got to hire your separate staff for that, or you'll burn them out. But the way you're going to make all your intros is not just from your summer camp. That doesn't get you much. But during the summer, there's a ton of other summer camps. And what you do is you go in and do what we call our after school enrichment program, which is a 6-lesson over 3 weeks. So you go twice a week for 3 weeks to all these different summer camps and teach this enrichment program of martial arts, and you graduate them at your school. And this weekend at our live event, we're at the Thornton School on Friday. All of our members are going to get to see one of these graduations from one of these after-school enrichment programs with about 50 or 60 kids coming, and they can see how they're signing them up and how they're getting appointments for them at the graduation at the school. But these summer camps that are in your area, when you go to them, that you're going to give them something free that they can add value to their program, they will jump all over it because you're not in competition with them. And it gives them something that they can put on their brochures that says also includes a 3-week martial arts program, or karate or BJJ or Kung Fu or whatever you're doing. And it's a real plus for them. It's a real plus for you. And when you research summer camps in your area, you're going to find 50 of them. They're everywhere. But when you take a 3 or 5 mile radius of your school, then that'll probably cut it down to about 15 or 20. And those are the ones you want to target.
So these are summer camps generally within daycares and that kind of thing.
Yeah, any kind of summer camp anywhere. Rec centers, some of these daycares have them. But there's also other areas, community centers have them. Other people have summer camps for all kinds of activities. You'll be surprised at how many there are when you start looking for them.
Yeah, and a lot of, there's probably a lot of different websites now that list all the different summer camps in your area. Here we have kids pages and one thing or another that everybody can do a free listing and they can promote. Here locally, we have a kids newspaper that still gets physically printed, and they do a summer camp guide, and then they do it online. But I will tell you, of your elementary schools in your area, a portion of them will have either their own staff or an externally contracted staff doing it. And those are the more difficult ones to find, I found. You've got to talk to the school before school gets out. And hell, I found them by just driving around the area and seeing cars in the parking lot at an elementary school and when wandering in to find out what was going on. But there are camps where they don't have a physical location. They just have a bus. And the bus, everybody meets at the bus, and then they take them to the pool. They take them to a movie theater. They take them to the park and one thing or another. We've had it where those buses showed up every hour on the hour, and we did an introductory with the kids, and the bus driver gave us a list of everybody on the bus on the way off the bus, and we went and made a copy, and then we contacted the parents while the kids were in the facility. But there's those that only have a bus. There's daycares do them. There's churches do them. The suspects are YMCA, YWCA, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, the churches, the community centers, if I didn't say that already, and then all the local daycares, and then look at your local elementary schools and figure out if they have one, if it's sponsored by somebody else or by them or whatnot. The one thing I might say, Master Smith, is you got to know more about what they're doing on their summer camp before you figure out how you're going to approach it. What I find a lot of the ones here have, the kids aren't there for 3 months. The kids are there for a week or two, right? So like here, University of Denver has tech camps and sports camps and one thing or another. I'd love to be in there, but the entire camp is a week. The local churches have a summer camp, but it's just a week. But then the local community center, they have one that's, from the day that school gets out to day school goes back in sessions, they're doing it. But every single day, it's a different makeup of kids. So if I went and tried to do a 3-week deal, every time I do it, it's like doing a first time, right? So if I see that that's what it is, what I'm going to do is, schedule a time to come in May or June, schedule a time to come in July, schedule a time to come in August. Each time I'm going to send permission slips home, and I'm going to just do a little one day or like a PE teacher for the day. As far as doing the full after school program, Master Smith, what if I have an elementary school with 500 kids, we'll get 20% to register, so we'll get 100. But if I have a daycare that's running a summer camp and there's only 30 kids, I'm not going to show up 6 times for those 30 kids for free. And if I do the registration process with 30 kids, I'll probably get 3 of them. So I'm not going to show up 6 times for 3 kids. What I will do is show up and do a day, get permission slips, show up for a different day, get permission slips, show up for a different day and get permission slips. But you've got to recognize what the structure of what they're doing is, how frequently you want to go back to that well. What I discovered many years ago when one of our schools was having trouble getting into the elementary school was an awful lot of people who are running summer camps during the summer were the same people who were involved in the elementary schools for before school and after school program. So I really got my foot in the door with the elementary schools by building a relationship with the people running the summer camps, right? But I wanted to shift gears here, unless there's any questions. I mean, that was a lot. Go ahead, Rand.
You mentioned farmers markets. Is that like you buy a space? How does that? You said they're super.
They
easy to
they
buy.
usually rent a booth for a couple $100.
Okay, great.
Hey, well, I have a question.
Good.
What are your go-tos for the prize wheel exactly in terms of what you're offering?
Let me give you 2 answers to that. The first answer is in the discussion forum. There's all kinds of different versions of that. I can show you a version of it right now, probably pretty quickly.
Do have a couple birthday parties on there and a couple free karate pizza parties, because that'll get you 10 to 20 times more per person. You know, we've had foam chucks, we had our water bottles with our logo on it.
And that's specific to the kids market, what you're saying right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kid market stuff. For
Mhm.
sure. Tim, here's the real answer to that question. It doesn't make a damn bit of difference.
Okay.
What the psychology is, they see a prize wheel and go, oh, I get to win something. And so I say, here, come spin the wheel and win a prize. And it's practically irrelevant what the prize is, right? And I was going to try to pull you up and show one.
Free t-shirt, free uniform,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
If it were adults, do hand wraps, boxing gloves, uniform,
T-shirts,
t-shirt,
shorts.
Stuff like that, right? And I'm not going to find it really quickly, but if you just go to the group and search prize wheel, you'll see plenty of examples. But
Does everybody know how to use that search function on our Facebook group? There's a search bar, Bob, but if you want to show everybody.
let's not do that right now. Let's not do. I have a couple other topics. We're going to run out of time, but search for the prize wheel in there. And again, those are going to be kids market stuff. But the real answer, Tim, is it's the last thing you want to stress about. There was an art show of all things here in Evergreen, and I was laughing my ass off because you walked in and there was a section where there was food trucks, and then there was tents of different vendors, including artists and one thing or another, and mostly there was hardly anybody at the vendors and so forth. And then if you could see across the field, there was one booth and there was a line of 100 people, and it was the local State Farm guy. And the local State Farm guy, now who gives a shit about insurance, and who especially wants to be on a beautiful sunny Sunday in the park in Evergreen, Colorado, talking to a State Farm guy, right? But he had a big ass prize wheel. It was neon lit. To this day, I have no idea what he was giving away. And 100 people, every time the prize wheel spun, more people went and got in line because they all wanted to see what they won. Right.
Is it advisable or not advisable to have a couple slots on that prize wheel essentially be like 2 free weeks of lessons or semi-private lesson, which in effect is like an intro class?
Just remember that your line is everybody who spins the wheel gets 2 free weeks of lessons.
Oh, okay.
plus whatever prize they win. You see, and that's how we get around somebody. You know, if we didn't do that, then we would have to have that loaded with a week or 2 weeks or a free month or something, because we got to get them into school is the most important thing. Well, if that's the most important thing, everybody who spins the wheel gets 2 weeks free plus whatever prize they win on the wheel.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I might add to that, it's nice to have it be something physical they have to come in and pick up either way.
Okay.
Because-
Do not give them those prizes at the event.
No.
You set up the appointment for when they come in for their first classes, when they get their prize.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah, okay. But before we finish, I want to shift topics and I was going to look at the movie coming out. I'll post this in the discussion forum. I will say in the kids market, Inside Out 2 is coming out June 14th. In the adult market, you have and the teenage market. I mean, it's going to be, you know, my son was begging me to go to Deadpool when he was 8, and I didn't let him. You know, now at 16, he's going to go regardless. But Deadpool and Wolverine is July 26th. There's also Fabulous 4, and there's a few other big weekends over the summer. The Garfield movie and Furiosa, Mad Max are coming out on the same weekend as an example on May 24th. That's coming up pretty quickly. But I'll post a listing of summer releases for the movie theater thing. That's again one of those things you just, in most cases, you call National Cinema Media, you know, tell them you want a tabling, and they, you know, as long as it's one of their theaters, they're going to charge you $750 or $1,000 or $500, depending upon the volume of the theater. Whatever number they quote you, can knock them down about 20%. But we can talk about that later. I wanted to briefly address the other elephant in the room. Is I talked to a lot of martial arts schools who all of a sudden their billing goes to shit over the summer. And what happens is they tell me, well, we don't have contracts, everything's month to month, and they want to cancel their billing. They want to cancel their billing because they're not going to be there over the summer. Or they have them all on a contract, a year contract, a 3-year contract, whatever. But then when somebody comes in and says, I'm not going to be there, they cancel their monthly billing. Rule number 1 is we never cancel the monthly billing over the summer. Number 2, we never have people on month to month. Number 3, we never have people on, you know, cancel anytime with a 30-day notice, right? Number 4 is we do have an ability for them to pause their lessons, but it's in the context of this is, for instance, with summer, what we'll do is talk to all the students, and they all have their testing cycle. In our case, it's every, 16 lessons every 2 months. And so we're going to sit down and we're going to go over with everybody. Now the next test is on whatever it is, August 15th. We want to make sure that you're going to be on track for that testing. When are you going to be on vacation? When you're going to be out of town and so forth. Okay, so you're going to be gone for a week. No problem. Let's do 3 lessons before you leave, 3 lessons when you get back. But with each one of them, you work it out. If they're gone for a month, you're going to move their testing cycle back. If they're gone for a week or 2, you're going to schedule makeups. But when you know that ahead of time, you can plan ahead for it, right? And if somebody says, well, I'm going to be gone for a month, I mean, do I still pay for the month? Say, well, you're really paying for a program to get to black belt. You're not really paying, in July for July. But what we'll do is we'll add that month of lessons to your agreement. We'll make sure we make them up when you get back, get you back on cycle with your test progress, so you don't lose touch with your peer group, and that you stay on track with the same people that you already know in class, right? You see the difference. So what'll happen with a lot of schools is people come and say, I'm gone for the summer, cancel my agreement. No, that's not what we want to do. We want to, in May, talk to everybody, pre-plan for staying on top of their testing cycle. And if they are in a situation where they're going to be gone for a period of time, we let them know we're going to do makeup lessons. We'll, do some privates if we need to get you back up. We'll get you back on on track with your testing process. We're going to add the month of time to the end of your agreement so you don't miss out on anything. Do you still stop the payments? No, that continues on. So you'll be in good shape with that. Does that make sense for everybody? So
I have a question.
go ahead.
So ever since I've been in the industry, every gym I've worked for, there's always like some kind of like cancellation process. And, it's something that I hear pretty commonly, like maybe not as commonly as maybe I'd think. But in the enrollment conference, sometimes the question will come up, well, what if, little Joey changes his mind in the next, whatever, like what do we do about cancellation? Like, what do you say to that?
Well, you and Tim, we both need to talk about pricing and the enrollment process, because you have a similar issue. But Tyler, here's the first part. Forget about the industry. They're mostly stupid and mostly broke. Okay. Rule number one in any business niche is never take advice from people who are broker or dumber than you are. Right. So that's like, rule number one. So people ask me a lot of times, what's the average tuition in the martial arts business? And I always say that's the wrong question to ask. If you ask, what's the average income in the martial arts business? The average is people are working a day job to support their karate school at night, right? That's the bottom half of the business. And the same thing is true of this. But what we're doing in the enrollment process is we're talking about the long-term follow-through to black belt, and then we're converting it into a trial enrollment, which is a quarter of the way to black belt, or in a BJJ system, it might be an eighth of the way to black belt, or whatever it might be. And then what we're doing is we're doing a 12-month enrollment, right? And so what the longer answer to the question is, this is just like school. This isn't whether Billy or Johnny is excited today to be in class. This is whether we have a long-term objective in the program. So you're not going to let him go to first grade or second grade or third grade, depending upon how he feels about going to second grade or third grade on any day. We're going to schedule his 2 days a week of martial arts. Now, if there's any protracted period where he just doesn't really want to go, let me know what's going on, because there's probably something else underneath it that we can solve, right? Now, in the actual enrollment conference, we do have a fallback position, which is we'll do what we came to call the gold belt guarantee, is let's get him to his first belt. That's going to be 16 lessons. He's going to, I'll give them the date. The next belt's going to be on July 20th. Let's get him to his first belt. Certainly that's plenty of time to have a comfort level and whether he's going to follow through on that. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah. Okay. Why don't we do this? Let's get him started. And if after he gets his first belt, you want to, bail him out of it, we'll cancel the balance of the agreement. But that's only a fallback for about 5% of them. It's not for everybody. Right. Now, what became common in the industry, if you will, is let us know at any time, and in 30 days ahead, and we'll cancel your balance of your contract. The reason for that is that fitness guys and martial arts guys didn't want to have to learn how to sell. So they wanted to eliminate the sales portion of it and make it simple. The other thing that's become common in the industry, which is the dumbest ass idea, and maybe I'm to blame, because I taught, one system to Lloyd Irving years ago, and then he taught it to all the BJJ and MMA guys, and then they convoluted it and butchered it. But one thing that's become common is everything's a 4-week paid trial, and then we just automatically roll it into a monthly tuition if you want to continue. And again, Matt Smith, that may be my fault, because I taught Lloyd the Children's Hospital idea, and then they butchered it from there. But anyway, Ken, you had a question? And feel free to just jump in.
Could we not, before we get off Tyler's question there, the line that I like to use, Tyler, and it seems to work most of the time, is when a parent says that, well, what if he quits, or, what if he doesn't finish the first question I ask, I'll say, is he not in the habit of completing things? Does he quit a lot? And then they'll usually like to say, to support their question, they'll say, oh yeah, he doesn't stick with anything. Then I say to the parent, well, is that a habit you'd like to see him break? And they went, well, yeah. How do we do that? I say, well, that's what martial arts does. It teaches kids how to set goals and stick with those goals. They set longer term goals and intermediate goals and short term goals. And by setting these smaller goals for them is how we get them to succeed, by reaching these goals that they set for themselves. You see, most kids quit most things because nobody ever taught them how to set a goal and stick with it and commit to it. That usually does it. Half of them you'll get with that. The other half, then you use that gold belt guarantee. Well, I'm sure after he tried it for one belt level, you would know for sure then, oh, well, yeah, once we got it, see, they think you're just going to let them sign up for one belt, right? When I'll say, okay, well, we'll sign him up for, for the trial program, but what we'll do is we'll give you an option to cancel it after his first belt graduation at the gold belt or whatever your first belt is. Now, the reason we say that is because she can't come back in 4 weeks and say, I want to cancel. We said she has an option to cancel after the first graduation. If they come to me and they try to quit after a month, then I say to them, well, Mrs. Jones, I thought that was a habit you wanted to break. That's why we agreed to at least make him go to that first belt graduation. So if he did stop, at least he completed a goal. And that'll at least help break his habit. Oh yeah, okay, we'll stick it out till then. And then by the time they get that, when they get that first belt and maybe a couple medals or something that you do at the graduations, now they're on a high, they don't quit. Out of the ones that I've given the gold belt guarantee, I might have had 1 out of 100 quit.
Yeah. But
Does
Ken-
that help?
Yeah, Ken?
Thank you, Master Oliver. I had a question and I just kind of wanted to, sorry, it's the educator mindset of me. I wanted to
Yeah.
kind of summarize what I understand, what you're saying, so that way I can apply it into what I'm doing. I've been trying to digest all your stuff and everything I could download from your files for the last
It's a
week.
lot, yeah.
Yep. I read ridiculously fast, so I've read mostly everything you put out so far in that group. Over the years, I've been trying to take my martial arts school and change it to the mindset of people who are interested, out of the mindset of a commodity and into a lifestyle. And so, and what I typically do, and I've got a little bit of reframing from some of the things I'm reading with you, I really like, but I make it seem like when people come in for my orientations, that it's a two-way interview that they're getting. And then when they do the orientation class with me, what I call is an on-ramp, a trial, it's still a two-way interview that they have to be invited to stay. So they feel like that it's not going to be me asking them to stay. They're going to be like, I want to stay.
Yeah.
But one of the things I'm reading in your literature, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, and this is kind of helping me move out of that commodity mindset, is to treat my academy like a private school. Where
They have to qualify.
They have to qualify, but also that what you said earlier really kind of sunk in with me about they're not paying for a month or 2 month or 3 month access or a 6 month access and then trying to cancel because life happens or they're taking vacation, but they're enrolled in a school.
Yeah.
If they took their kids out of private school, a public school, and put them in a private school, they're not going to ask the principal and the director to, not pay for a month because they're going to go on vacation.
Yeah.
They're going to continue paying for enrollment for 2 reasons. One, if they take them out, they may lose their spot with that kid. And 2, it is the commitment that what they're working towards to make them. And what I've been reading through your leadership program is, we're only taking so many kids into that. Your kids want to get a black belt, but you also want them to do better in school and get the benefits of martial arts. then, you know, if you go on vacation, that's fine, but your spot may not be guaranteed when you come back.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and you want the attitude of whoever's doing enrollment and renewal. I used to frame it before they, fell from grace. I used to use the example of Harvard, a highly selective university, the admissions counselor. But in a sales perspective, whether if you go to a Ferrari dealership, the new models, you have to have owned like 2 of the previous models before you can even be on the list to buy the thing, right? If you go to a Porsche dealership, you're not going to walk in and, look at the new 911 Turbo, which is going to be 140,000 MSRP. By the time you're done, you're not going to go in there and say, "Hey, throw me the keys. I'd like to go drive that around the block." And, by the way, can you do it for a $500 a month payment? I mean, that's not the process is going to be, right? They're going to pre-qualify you. And in a sales parlance, it's takeaway selling, right? What if it seems like I can't have it, I want it. If it seems like everybody gets it, it's not very valuable.
Right. So the higher value that we're charging is to turn away the people who aren't ready to commit to longer term, not just to, support the living that we want.
Well, and the reality is closing rates tend to go up, not go down as you raise your tuition. And the levels of problems that you have with students, complaints, pain in the ass, bitching, go down. So what people think is that their closing rates are going to go down and people are going to be more hyper critical. And the reality, the opposite is true. The guys who did martial arts schools and Walmart superstores had the most critical population at the lowest price who bitched about everything.
Mhm.
And somebody who's charging $400 a month or $500 a month have people who don't complain about much of anything and are really happy and excited to be there. But the same thing is true with closing ratios, right? So if, when I did it years ago, is I was expecting my closing numbers to go down, but I was raising the price enough that it was going to compensate for that. And I had an overcrowding problem. And the reality is every time we raised the price, the closing numbers went up.
Yeah, I found that in, because before this January, I decided to go full time. I think I was telling Mr.
Yeah.
Dunn that. But I have had my school part time for the last 5 years. It's just very, very part time, and I've always been very selective in who I took.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've had a big issue with is, and I'm reading through all this stuff, is in the beginning, and when I was teaching nutrition and fitness, because I'm a licensed healthcare provider, I'd go spend $1,000 to be at a booth somewhere at a big event with 20,000 people going through, and I had no clue what I was doing, and I couldn't compete with topless girls handing out prizes when you're the only one there. But I know what to do now, but the problem still comes is like on these events that are on Saturdays or in the evenings, I'm teaching classes from 4 to 9 p.m. 5 days a week, and then from 8 a.m. till 1 p.m. on Saturday. For me to go out there and pop up a booth somewhere, I know the value of what it is, but it also means I have to cancel classes to do it because I'm the only one. If you could take yourself back 40 years, do you become more selective in the places that you go, which seems like a rhetorical question, or do you just take a crapshoot and do it?
If I was going to be fair to that answer, I'm not a good case study. Master Smith will tell you, I came to Denver before the school opened. I had 2 people working for me. One of them was my soon-to-be wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, but I had 2 people working for me. And I opened 5 schools in 18 months, 6 schools in 30 months, and had 3,500 students. And within what was that? Within 4 years.
That's mind blowing.
And so I was never making that decision of, do I make the sale? Do I teach the class? Do I do a promotional activity? The answer was yes to all of them. And when you're a small school looking to get big, is what I see a lot of times is, how many students do you have now, Ken?
23.
Okay. Well, 3 classes a week for 23 students is plenty, right? So really, when I did a startup, is we would have like a very limited class schedule. And then we would have all the other days of the week were for first intros, second intros, and promotional, right? So, you know, what you need is you need to add 100 students like real damn quickly, right? And
Right.
so your first highest priority is in going and beating the bushes for people. The 23 people are paying how much on average right now?
The lowest is 160, the highest is 350.
Okay, so it's not horrible.
No.
We do have a lot of people who are, in all truthfulness, they either need to figure out a way to triple what the current people are paying, or to flush them out. You know, you're not trying to get rid of those people. You just need to add another 100.
Mm. And I
so-
teach mostly adults. So, you know, I do have classes spread out throughout the week, and I have a couple kids classes, but I don't mix adults and teens. I don't mix teens and the youth. I know a lot of schools do that. I don't. So that
I would,
and
I
I'm never
would,
gonna, I'm not gonna say I won't do this or I won't do that or it doesn't work for me. I'm not gonna use those terminologies. I want to try to figure out how to make it work for me without completely changing too much.
well, the thing you're going to have to change a lot is you're going to have to get good at marketing, good sales.
Fair.
But let me rephrase what you just said. We don't put an adult 27-year-old who comes in on their own into a kids class. But we don't have kids classes, we have family classes. So if I have an 8-year-old who comes in, I'm going to do everything I can, including insist that mom and dad take the first and second lesson with them, to get the kid, the brother, the sister, mom and dad all enrolled. And I'm not going to tell mom she now has to come Tuesday, Thursday at 7, and the child comes Monday, Wednesday, and the dad comes, right? I'm not going to split them up. And I'm certainly not going to take a family. This is the Melanie Schumann stupidity. I'm not going to take a family that has a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old and say, you know, this kid comes on these days, this kid comes on these days, this kid comes at these days, you come on these days. They're all going to be in the same class time. Does that make sense? So when you look at,
I guess I have a lot more questions after that.
yeah, when you look at your scheduling, I would recommend you have family classes and then you have adult classes. And the next thing to decide is what market do you really want to build, right?
Adult has always been my primary market.
Okay, well then get rid of the kids classes and let's go get 100 more adults. Don't try to be everything to everybody, right? If you're going to be an adult only school, let's go get 100 adults. And it's just as easy to go get 100 adults as it is to get 100 kids, right? I wouldn't do the Inside Out movie, but I certainly would do, you know, let's look at the schedule, but you know, at the movie theater, I would do Deadpool, and I would do some of those others that are going to attract a teen and adult audience. But then I would look at all the events going on in the area, and you're going to have a lot of events that attract a young adult crowd. And I would look, and by young adult, you know, I'd rather have the 30, 40-year-old crowd. But you're going to find a lot of places you can get to them. And then you can do a lot of co-promotional things with local employers and so forth. I had a thing that I was doing for years with US West, which was the #1 employer in Colorado. Coors, that was, I think, the #3 employer in the state of Colorado. We did a thing with WorldCom, you know, previously MCI, who was like the 5th largest employer in the state and so forth, right? So a lot of times you can find, you know, plus we had things going with the Denver Broncos and the Denver Nuggets, basketball and football. So there's a lot of places you can find a big pool of adults to go draw from. Hell, back when I was working the fitness business, you know, we did condo complexes, apartment complexes, worked with the, you know, whoever was on site as the manager, director, or sometimes they have a marketing or events coordinator or something. And you know, when I did that first Blitz, by the way, that was all pre-Karate Kid. So that was 90-10 probably, or 80-20 adults to kids. Same thing is true now. I mean, there's a huge adult market. That's what you want. I personally prefer the kids market. I would much rather have an 8-year-old because the parents are there to support the kid. They make the payments. I tend to get a little bit more upscale audience and so forth with that.
I understand the logic of the children. It's more of, you know, I spent 20 years active duty deployed around the world, and then I came back to continue I was teaching adults in the military.
Yeah.
as the combative people. So coming out, it was an easy transition. I've had to teach myself to like teaching children.
Well,
But to grow a school, because, you know, prior to you, it's just me looking at other marketing things, trying to figure out how to grow a martial arts business. I know how to grow a nutrition business. I just don't want it anymore.
there's a shit ton of bad advice floating around.
There is.
Online. You got to be very careful about that. But I mean, that's it, Ken. It's pretty straightforward. We're kind of way over our time limit here, but Tim, express your disbelief about pricing, because you are actively in need of cognitive behavioral therapy, because you're openly espousing online what everybody else is going to believe without ever having talked to any of them about anything. Now,
Yeah.
does everybody understand what I just said? You know, one of the better forms of therapy, is probably the best, is cognitive behavioral therapy. And one of the things they spend a lot of time on, Elon Musk posted a list of 50 common cognitive distortions a year or two ago. But, you know, there's many common, you know, what are referred to as cognitive distortions. And it's a way you think that gets in your way. And the one that I see us doing in a sales context a lot is mind reading. Mind reading is when you tell me what they're going to think or say without having any idea what they're going to think or say, right? What they're thinking is, well, how do you have any idea what they're thinking, right? You know, they might be psychotic or schizophrenic. They might be thinking about, you know, anything else. What they may be thinking is, wow, that's super cheap for what they're providing, right? You have no idea what they're thinking, right? You do have whatever comes out of their mouth as an objection. And I got to tell you, there's another layer there, because more often than not, what they say is the objection is a smokescreen also to avoid making a decision, rather than it's truly what they're trying to solve, right? When you're doing any sale, but especially for us on an enrollment or renewal, there's only two objections. There's money or time. I mean, that's the only two objections. So everybody who doesn't enroll is going to say it's because of time or money. Now, sometimes the time is I can't come twice a week. Sometimes the time is I won't, you know, sign a contract for that long. The money, sometimes I can't pay you that much now, or I can't pay you that much on an ongoing basis. But every time you get an objection, it's going to be one or the other. So when somebody says, I'm going to raise my price and see if people object about money, well, of course they're going to object about money. Everybody you ever didn't enroll in the past objected about time or money, right? Everybody you ever enroll in the future, if they don't enroll, it's going to be time or money. Occasionally it's going to be, I just don't like you, you guys suck, and my kid doesn't like this, or I don't like this. But rarely will they say that, right? It's going to be time or money. So Tim, what is it your concern is on pricing?
Well, my concern is when I looked at your pricing sheet, the suggestion sheet, you know, an 800 initial, I can't possibly imagine the vast majority of people not walking out of the door in my city. Keeping in mind that Massachusetts.
Okay, you can't possibly imagine the vast majority of people not walking out when you suggested 800.
I can't.
Well, I know. I just want to anchor that statement in before you.
Yeah, I want to anchor it in that I mean that. I can't imagine that.
I'm sure you can't. So what you're saying, when you look at that sheet, your balls shrivel up to the size of acorns, and your sphincter tightens, and you have, you know, a great deal of psychic trauma.
Not only do they shrivel up, they're not even there. They just cease to be.
They're kind of like Bruce Lee, and they go back into your abdominal, and they never.
But Tim, remember, he's not charging 800. If you finalize your paperwork today, you get half off, so it's only 400.
Well, yeah, that's one thing. Initial tuition today, we give you a $400 discount if you know that's the part of the sales process. I was going to show everybody what you're talking about, but this is what I posted. That made your balls shrivel up to the size of acorns, or shrink back into your body. You had something else you were gonna say, though. You don't understand in blank.
I mean, People in Western Mass are leaving in droves, mostly because of the cost of living here is getting pretty ridiculous. I mean, there's some pretty good information to support that. Why is that funny, Master Smith? This is
It is. It's
This is
absolutely
true.
hysterical. Go ahead. Go ahead.
it's hysterical. Okay, it's hysterical.
No,
I mean,
it is.
I can send you some of the literature that I've
No,
been.
no.
seeing on this.
I completely agree with you. There was and I'm not sure how valid it was, but there was a thing of how much money you need to make in any given area to live
Yep.
comfortably as a family. Massachusetts was the most expensive on the list.
Above Hawaii now, right?
Massachusetts was most expensive on the list. Colorado was in the top 5. Seattle, Denver, obviously,
Silicon.
California generally. Silicon Valley is a area that's not a city, but San Jose, San Francisco is typically the most expensive. But yeah, I fully understand, and we're laughing because it's true, but listen to yourself. Okay?
No, I know it's incredibly negative and not useful to think that way. So I do need the cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever you're calling it.
Yeah. Common cognitive distortions are confirmation bias, mind reading, and so forth. We can go on and on with that. But this is what you're talking about. The way you read that was it's $800 initially to get started. If you go ahead and finalize your enrollment today, we give a $400 discount. So it's $400 to get started in the first month. So that would be the presentation. In reality, by the time you get done, yeah, they're paying about $800 to enroll. The reason why cost of living is high in India, this is what he's laughing about. You've probably heard me tell this story 100 times because
I have.
they're good friends of mine, and they find it humorous that I'm still telling the story 20 years later. But I was sitting in at a breakfast restaurant with the entire West Coast staff, West Coast Taekwondo. That's Tony Thompson, Ernie Reyes. They had a room, and they had, at the time, I don't know what it was, 15 schools. And so they had all the staff there. So there's 30 people in the room, and they did what we do. They have a stats board up. They probably got that from me or Master Smith, maybe from Nick. And we're going through and looking at it. I did a lot of support. They were friends of mine, but I did a lot of support. I went to their retreats in Squaw Valley and so forth. And I looked at the stats board, and I turned to Tony, who's Ernie's partner. And I said to Tony, Tony, I don't understand. He said, what don't you understand? I said, why are you in Silicon Valley? You're right between Stanford, which is where Silicon Valley starts, and San Jose. The schools are all in this area. Hell, some of your schools are across the street from Apple or HP or one thing or not. This is before Google and the online guys were the heavier hitters. I guess not heavier than Apple, but I said, why is it that in Silicon Valley, you're charging less than half of what I'm charging in Denver, Colorado? And he said to me, and this is the dumbest thing anybody's ever said to me. He said, well, the cost of living is so high in Silicon Valley, that's all they can afford. And I said to him, I do have a handicap. My handicap is I have a bachelor's in economics and an MBA, master's in business. And I can tell you that something that people don't seem to understand is supply and demand. Supply and demand is the reason the prices go up is that there's too many dollars chasing too few goods. And so in areas where housing inflates, it's supply and demand. Either there's not enough supply or there's too much demand. In other words, there's too many dollars chasing too few goods. So the reason why in Massachusetts, I always butcher saying in Mass, in Boston and in the greater state, why cost of living is high is people make a shit ton of money there compared to in Missouri or compared to in Mankato, Minnesota, or compared to in Texas or wherever you're at. And what he's also laughing about is, what I've said 1,000 times is it's funny how people justify low price, because we've had the guy who had a school in the financial district of New York City say, "Oh my goodness, nobody can afford that here." You know, when an efficiency apartment is $3,000 in the area. Why is an efficiency apartment $3,000 in New York City? Because people will pay it, right? If people wouldn't pay it, they'd be sitting empty. In fact, they have a waiting list. You know, there's too many people wanting to pay ridiculous amounts of money for, you know, for those apartments. Same, but we've had in Dodge City, Kansas. Oh, you don't understand, my people there. You know, we're in a rural community in Middleburg, Florida, which is a rural area of, you know, outside of Jacksonville, but it's not in Jacksonville. It's a real rural area. Oh, people can't afford that here. They ended up, by the way, raising their prices almost by accident. And then in Mankato, Minnesota, that's Colby. You know, he was charging $85 a month. Oh, you don't understand. We're a rural area. You know, there's farming. They would never pay that. I've had somebody in Malibu. Do you know where Malibu is? Malibu is where all the movie stars buy homes on the, you know, you call it the Streisand effect, because Barbara Streisand was pissed off at her beachfront property, that they were selling pictures of her beachfront property online. That's what Malibu. I had somebody in Malibu tell me, "Oh, you don't understand. Why people are too smart to ever pay that much for martial arts." You know, it's the same people who are, by the way, paying Bruce Lee in 1968 $1,000 an hour to teach him in his backyard. But you know, we hear the same excuse everywhere in the country, right? Is, Tim, there's two things. And Ken, you're an academic, so go read Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, Science, and Practice. But price determines perception of value, as Cialdini's in the first chapter, is if I don't have any other criteria for determining whether something's of high quality, if it's the most expensive, I assume it's the best. If it's the cheapest, I assume it's the worst, right? Now, that doesn't mean if it's you know, the new Mercedes SL 550 or whatever the model numbers are right now, AMG, that doesn't mean I can't go to two different dealerships and compare exactly the same model that came off the same line and knock them down on price. But we're not like that, right? So when you say that, you should frame it as two different questions. Is what you provide in your program and the outcome of your program, is it worth it? Does it provide a high value? If I were to line up, you know, let's say you had, you know, promoted 1,000 black belts. You know, I've done this with our black belt tests with literally hundreds of people, and take a moment for me, suspend disbelief, take yourself back to the moment you enrolled in, you know, in Mile High Karate. And if I could give you back all the money and all the time that you've invested, and you could decide to do something else, would you do it? Never got a yes. How about if I gave you $100,000 and all the money back and all the time? How about if I gave you $500,000? How about if I gave you $1 million? And this is the basis of that letter, we have a renewal letter. It's called the $1 Million Letter. And I exactly tell that story, which is a true story. Would you go back in time and make a different decision? The answer is universally no, right? I did seminars of martial arts school owners all across the country. I asked that question. I had one smart ass say yes. Everybody else says no. If that's the case, if when you get to black belt or second degree black belt, if you say all of the emotional development, all the people I've met, all of the things I've accomplished, all of the impact it's had on ever expanding circles around my life, if I wouldn't take $1 million to give that back, plus everything I ever paid, why do you ever worry about you're charging too much, right? So that's question number one, is if your program, if the developmental process they go through isn't worth it, you need to fix it, right? But if it is, then why do you ever worry about that? Then now the second issue is can they afford it? And what I find is if I do a good job of presenting the value, and then I've got to now evaluate my marketing, because it's certainly possible to fish in the wrong pond. If I have a bunch of people come in and say, "Oh my God, I can't afford bus tokens," and to do this, then I'm bringing the wrong people in, right? And in every area, you're going to have the people over there in government subsidized housing. That's not my audience, right? That's Kick Drugs Out of America or Kickstart's audience. That's, let's go to at-risk people and do it as a charity. But that's not my audience. My audience is the average middle-class family who wants to do something solid for their kid, or, the average, professional who wants to do something that's more fun and more interesting than working out at the gym, right? So then if you get too many people who say, I can't believe how great this is the best thing ever, but you just got to help me figure out how I can afford it. We can't figure out how to work it into the budget. That's okay. You're going to get some of those. That's a marketing evaluation. Let's make sure we're not, bringing in too many broke people. Let's go focus on, the right group of people coming in. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
and Tim, one of our members, Len Broussard, he's in Lowminster and Fitchburg. Do you know where that is?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and that demographic is not anywhere as good as yours. He's charging $347 on a basic.
Hmm.
And has
Okay.
no problem. And that's right in your backyard. I mean, that's not far from you.
Well, after I posted that publicly, Master Oliver, unabashedly, I tossed it around in my mind, and really Jeff's response was kind of the same thing I arrived to, where if the marketing's in effect and you're generating those 100 leads, I mean, you're probably going to price some people out. There's probably going to be some broke people that check out the school and go, oh, shit, I can't afford this. But you only need to win 10 to 20 battles a month while maintaining a low dropout rate to win the war, so to speak. Is that fair to
There you
say?
go. That's a good answer. I like
Okay.
that answer. That's a good one.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate that. I guess Master Oliver's gone, but Master Smith, I appreciate that therapy. I needed that.
No problem. And that's for everybody. And
Yeah.
so we're a little over our time. So
Hey,
thank
we're
you
way-
everybody
we're
for-
way-
for sticking
we're way-
on.
We're way over our time, but Tim, does that make sense?
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for the
Yeah.
behavioral therapy.
But
You're muted, Master Oliver.
completely break yourself of putting into other people's thoughts things that aren't there.
Okay.
Okay. And you can always find the justification and the rationale to support what you're already fearful of. Right. But, Tony Robbins has this phrase. It sounds weird to somebody who doesn't understand what he's saying. He says often my delusion is. What he means by that is I can either view the world as this is going to lead to everything is going to make me successful. And now I can look for all the reference for why that's true. Or
Yes.
I can look for all the things that are going to keep me from being successful and find the references for why that is. It may be
Yes.
neither belief is completely true, but which one is more productive for my outcome?
Totally understand. Well, I've traditionally been a pessimist, and I've been trying to change that in the last several years of my adult life. So once again, I appreciate it.
Well, I tend to be a pessimist. I like
Right.
Franklin's old quote. Plan for the expect the best and plan for the worst.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But again, if you fish in the right pond and bring enough people through the pipeline, most of the ones that don't enroll aren't going to go all the way to the conference and not enroll because of price. I mean, and frankly, that's the only place you ever get into price, right?
Right.
Most of them are just going to fall apart because they got distracted. They have other things going on. You didn't follow up well, one thing or another. So that's not even really the issue, mostly with it. So you've got to get out of your thinking that way. One other story from years ago, and we'll call it a day, but Miko Pellet in Coronado, California, I got him to quadruple his renewal pricing, and then he freaked out. And I talked to him, and he said, "Oh, everybody's saying it's too expensive. That's why I'm not doing it." And I said, "Well, just put together your stats, Miko. Put together your stats. Stay on the track of what you're doing. Let's look at your stats." And so I said, "Go pull the stats of everything that was going on before you made the change, and then what happened since." Guess what? His closing rate went up 20% at quadruple the price point. But what he heard is everybody who didn't enroll because it was too expensive.
Right.
And I said to him, well, Miko, before you raised the price, why did they say they didn't renew? He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, you were concerned about price. You now hear that it's too expensive. There's only time or money. So I guarantee you the same excuse everybody used before was it's too expensive. And so what freaking difference does it make? Closing rate went up. Okay, on that note, we'll call it a day. See you guys next week.
Awesome. Thank you.
Or tomorrow if you're going to be here.
See you tomorrow.
Thanks.
See you guys.
Master Oliver.